Sports Talk. We're back to our normal night, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome in. It's Greg Banks in the studio tonight, and welcoming with us this evening, Chad States, live from Huntington. Dave Shannon, live from Altoona this evening, and we are in for an exciting show, guys. Chad, we missed you on Thursday night. We had that abbreviated show, I guess, kind of a special event, but you were busy that night. But not a lot happened on Thursday night. We talked a little bit about Penn State, which we'll talk about their wrestling squad, and of course, some other things coming up. But more importantly, let's kick things off tonight, guys, as we welcome you in. Jimmy, by the way, cannot join us this evening. He has work. And Jeff Speck, we're not sure where he is. He could be busy with basketball this evening as well. Meanwhile, Dave, let me ask you this. You got a chance to watch that game yesterday. Division hopes kind of still alive for the Steelers after victory in Cincinnati, but right off the bat yesterday, Cincinnati, man, they took the gloves off and they came at us. I think they wanted to use a little intimidation, and the Steelers didn't back down.
Well, when it gets into having something happen in the pregame, only 70% of the stadium's filled, and you got something going on at midfield while the teams are out there stretching, throwing the ball around, doing the things they do in warm-up to get ready for a game. And when it happens, then you know what the rest of the game is going to be like. And, something happened yesterday, which is now getting to be a little bit of a concern. And I really like Antonio Brown. Mm-hmm. But I'll tell you what, I mean, the guy's got a mean streak in him. I mean, that incident yesterday, I'm sure you saw the slapping of the helmets that took place early in the first quarter. And it's like Antonio, I think, needs to. I'm not sure, with the goalpost thing the other week, and then with what happened there yesterday, and he gets a flag thrown on him for doing that. Of course, that was offsetting because the defender got a penalty flag also. Mm-hmm. But Antonio's got to. I love the enthusiasm he has, but he's got to calm down a little bit.
I don't know about you, Chad, but that intimidation did not start from the get-go. Matter of fact, it may have even hurt them in the long run as far as the Bengals were concerned. But we expect that in that rivalry, correct?
Yeah.
It got chippy. And somewhere, Hines Ward was smiling away.
Yeah,
you know it as well as I do. And when he saw Antonio Brown, he was saying, "That's my boy.
That's my boy."
Picking up where I left off, for crying out loud.
And that's true.
It's your division rivals here. And, Cincinnati was as much to blame as what Pittsburgh was. And, I was interested in Tomlin's comments at the half when they said, hey, you've been hit with, a couple penalties here. What do you think? He said, hey, it's just business in the AFC North.
Yeah, and that's true.
And he's right with it. He's letting his players play. Do I think it was a little bit excessive? Yeah, I do. But, Cincinnati was out to show that, hey, this is our division, mm-hmm. because they have not owned the AFC North at all. Pittsburgh was out to say, I'm sorry, but we still own it. And, they showed that. They showed that yesterday.
Yeah, and how excessive can it be when I watched a couple of guys, even on the ground, slapping each other, trying to poke each other's eyes out. I think you guys watched that too.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, it was a real battle in the trench. But, needless to say, the Steelers scored on their first three possessions against the NFL's top-scoring defense, and they pushed the Bengals around throughout the day and even hurt their quarterback. Let's talk a little bit about that. I've not heard any reports, Chad. You may want to talk on this, but is Andy Dalton out for the rest of the season, or what's happening with him?
Well, they're playing that close to the vest. They are saying that he does not need surgery on the thumb.
Yeah.
So now it's all about when the right thumb gets healed up. Obviously, it must be on his throwing hand. For the reason he is not going to play.
Yeah.
Let's face it, though. If he is not able to come back, Cincinnati's chances of succeeding in the playoffs has gone way down. Mm-hmm. And it's even winning the division has hurt. A.J. McCarron had come in and looked okay, but you lose a starting quarterback in the NFL, it's almost a death sentence.
Oh, man.
So, if I was a Bengals fan, I would be a lot concerned about what happened yesterday.
Well, think about how many...
Dalton,
yeah, go ahead.
But Tyler Eifert getting hurt, too.
Eifert, too,
the tight end got banged up and had to go out on a concussion protocol and get looked at. So, there was a series of things that happened to Cincinnati that made you think of Kimo Van Olhoffen and what he did to Carson Palmer in 2005.
Yeah.
And, no, Pittsburgh came here and, as Yogi Berra would say, it's deja vu
all over again. And, the Steelers, Antonio Brown and Alejandro, what's his name, Villanueva. They basically started the whole thing scuffling with Michael Johnson and Reggie Nelson in that game yesterday, and it just kept up the rest of the game. Now, having said that, A.J. McCarron. I haven't seen the guy since he was with Alabama. Something makes me think that he's probably one of the first quarterbacks from Alabama since maybe Kenny Stabler to even score a touchdown. I know Joe Namath did, but there's a history when it comes to these quarterbacks from Alabama, Dave. Most of them don't really throw that well, other than Stabler and maybe Joe Namath.
I'll tell you what, though, McCarron, that 70-yard touchdown pass, that was some pretty good stuff.
That was a shocker. That's what that was.
That's a real wake-up call. If you thought you just got a break because Andy Dalton went down, think again. I mean, that was an impressive touchdown pass that he was able to make. And one thing, Dalton hurt himself. I mean, he went out to make a tackle because he threw an interception, and he got his thumb up, and it went into the knee, and that was the end of that too.
Got jacked up
to his knee, and that's that's part of playing football. It wasn't because I'll always remember the deal back in the playoffs, and they said, well, the Steelers did that to take him out.
We had nothing to do with that. He ran into that guy himself.
Bottom line is. Dalton hurt himself. It's something that happens in football. And McCarron, I don't know. I would think on paper it's going to definitely get you to the point where you would say, this is going to cause a problem come postseason. But if McCarron can, he's going to take a majority of the snaps. That's the other thing you have to remember as a backup. You don't get to rehearse the full playbook. You know it. And you know what's being called, but you don't have the experience in running those plays. Even in practice, you get a limited number of runs as the backup. So McCarron, I don't know. I was pretty impressed with what he did there yesterday.
Well, it's interesting because, as you mentioned, like Ben and Antonio Brown and Bryant and some of his receivers and Williams even in the backfield, they develop a rhythm. And McCarron basically coming fresh off of the bench. I don't believe he's been in at all this season, to the best of my knowledge. So having said that, he didn't put in a bad performance, but there's going to have to be some work, and he's going to have to work with these guys because let me ask you this, Chad, off the bat. You think without Dalton in there, let's say he sits out 2 games, they pretty much don't have to win out, but they got to win at least 2, and we've got to win out to wrap this thing up and get into playoffs, and there's a lot of ifs there, and we'll talk about it. But if Dalton doesn't show up, what are their chances now?
The Bengals' chances?
Yeah, for the Bengals.
I think they're hurt. I think they're dented. I'm not sure who they have down the stretch to play. But anytime you lose your starting quarterback in the NFL, it hurts. And it's like Dave said, McCarron's not getting a lot of these first-team reps all the way through the season up until now. So he's going to have to develop on the fly and learn, get with these guys and meld with them quickly for Cincinnati to continue on. I honestly think this is a dead even heat going down. I could see Cincinnati dropping 2 of their last 3. I could easily see Pittsburgh winning all 3 out, although it's not going to be as easy as people think.
No.
Denver comes to town next week. Then they play Baltimore, and then they get Cleveland. And say what you will about Johnny Manziel, Cleveland didn't look too bad yesterday.
Hey, but also you got to remember the Jets and the Chiefs are still in the mix there. I mean, they're not far off to mix this thing up. Again, Monday Night Sports Talk, Greg Banks in the studio, Dave Shannon, Altoona, and Chad States in Huntington tonight talking about the Steeler game. Steelers win that game 33-20, kind of convincingly. Some of the milestones in the game, let me run this past you guys, and you can talk about it. Roethlisberger throwing for 282 yards. Heath Miller having 10 receptions. I'm glad they used him a lot yesterday. D'Angelo Williams scoring twice. Also, especially after Dalton went out, the offense looked really good. Now, the offense did fail to go over 450 yards of total offense for about the first time in a month. Dalton broke his thumb trying to tackle Stephen Tuft following an interception on that Bengals first drive. Now, without Dalton, they say that the Bengals may have to turn to A.J. McCarron. But one of the milestones is this one, Mike Tomlin reaching his 90th career victory faster than any other Steeler coach after Sunday's win over the Bengals. The number of games needed to reach 90 wins by a Steeler coach included 141 games before he hit that 90 90 mark. Chuck Noll had to play 144 games, or at least coach 144, and Bill Cowher 149. That really speaks to the consistency, doesn't it, Dave, of the Steeler coaching staff?
I think so. I think that it speaks to the organization as a whole.
Yeah.
Simply because there has always been this. You see that they seem to have, and they've always had. Now, obviously, guys are getting older, and some of the guys, there's some attrition going on within the Steelers organization, but they have, and hopefully they put people in place that will continue to do this. There's a type of player that they really they expect a certain attitude both on and off the field. Mm-hmm. And Santonio Holmes, they got rid of him, and it was they didn't even blink an eye.
Oh no!
And who can forget the catch he made against the Arizona Cardinals?
Right.
But Santonio Holmes off the field was not the kind of guy that fit the Steelers mold.
Yeah.
And I think that goes a big way. I've been around the Erie Indoor Professional Football Team, and there is a specific type of individual that they expect, and I've seen them get rid of people because their off-the-field antics don't match what they're looking for as far as somebody, their on-field. Doesn't matter what their on-field performance is. It matters what kind of man they are. Yeah. And I think that's been a part of the Steelers as well.
Hey, Chad, have you remembered a year like this year where it is so tight in the AFC? Again, given the fact that the Bills and the Jets and also KC's involved in this thing, and it's almost like the Steelers have to win out to make this happen. I mean, a team could actually end up winning, 10, 11 games this year, not even get into the playoffs. You remember anything like that recently?
Didn't the Patriots win 11 games and not make the playoffs a couple of years ago?
That may have
Castle
been.
was their quarterback.
Okay,
so I think it's happened, but it's infrequent. And the thing is, it's Pittsburgh's kind of put themselves in this position with earlier losses whenever Ben wasn't there. If Ben's back, I don't think they're losing to Baltimore. I think the KC game goes a different direction. I think that there's 2 wins in there that they or that they could have had back that they're not in position with this, because quite frankly, this Pittsburgh team is on a different level than what the Jets are, than what the Bills are, than what the Texans are, and even what the Chiefs are. To me, they're the hottest team in the NFL, this side of the Seahawks and the Carolina Panthers, and they're playing great football at the right time. The problem is they've had a few setbacks due to injuries that have put them in this position where they've got to win out and hope for a little bit of help along the way, too.
Well, you mentioned a team there, man, that is a surprise. They look really flat at the beginning of the season, and then we kind of wrote off Russell, the quarterback for the Seattle Seahawks.
Russell Martin, yeah.
Yeah, or it wasn't Russell Martin, but what's his name? It'll come to me. But anyhow, we kind of wrote him off, and then what happened is Seattle now is emerging kind of out of nowhere. I think they won the last 5 of the last 6, or maybe the last 6 of 6. This guy's thrown 16 touchdowns now, like in the last 4 games. So, somewhere there, hell, Seattle could be in the mix along with the Chiefs. And then, you look on the other divisions and you see Arizona, they're hanging in there. Let me ask you about this, Dave. I don't know if you watched any of the game, maybe Chad. Philadelphia Eagles now. Yesterday, they played the Bills, and Shady McCoy, of course, plays for the Bills now, and you've got Rex Ryan, who's the coach of the Bills, and Chip Kelly continues, I guess, basically to run his mouth. And you mentioned last week, Dave, on Thursday, Sam Bradford's looking hot this time of year, but is there any chance that Philadelphia could become the spoiler in their division? Because some of these divisions in the NFL, let's face it, they're just not all that strong this year.
Yeah, it's obviously the NFC East is, a total surprise to me that it is in the shambles that it's in.
Right.
Whoever wins that division is probably going to end up with a sub 500 record in order to win a division, and it's happened before. I mean, there have been teams that have gotten into the playoffs with under 500 or 500 marks and managed to win a game or two. But I think the Eagles, they're on an upswing to be sure, and there are weaknesses. I mean, that was a close game down to the end. And Buffalo had a chance to tie it there, but their quarterback just wasn't able to get them, into the end zone or anywhere near at the end of the game. So, but the Eagles, considering the division that they're in, yeah, I think they have a chance to make it to the playoffs with no doubt.
Probably unlike the Cowboys this year. They're having some problem. But conversely, let's talk about something positive. Let's talk about the Carolina Panthers. Chad, you think Ron Rivera should rest his starters? Like, if they're heading towards that 16-0 record, would you think that he may pull them out after the first quarter in that last game if they're ahead? I mean, what do you think on that?
I would.
Yeah.
What's an undefeated record mean? Ask the New England Patriots about 6 years ago.
Yeah, well, that's true.
Well, honestly, it doesn't mean anything.
Well, let's face it, Carolina's probably going to end up. They're going to end up with a bye week anyhow.
Well, they already have that.
Okay.
The bye week's already done.
Right.
I think they another win and they've got home field clinched up.
Okay.
So at that point in time, heck yeah, you rest your starters. Now you want to be careful that you're doing it the right way and making sure that you're not losing momentum out of it or doing anything like that. But yeah, I mean the eye is on the prize. It is not, hey, I just won a regular season title.
Right.
Nobody cares about that. It's about winning the Super Bowl. So yeah, you rest your starters. You don't worry about whether you go undefeated or not.
It's just like Dave and I struggling here with the quarterback's name for the Seahawks, Russell Wilson. Only because they played so flat this season, even though they were in the mix the last two seasons. You kind of easily forget these guys when you don't see them every week. You know what I mean? Or they're not really playing up to their abilities. But having said that, Cam Newton, again, do you think hands down, and I know we went over this a couple of times, MVP, Chad, who would be your MVP selects, and then Dave, I'll go with you.
Oh, it's got to be Cam. I mean, his team's 13-0.
Yeah.
He's playing great football right now. He's clearly the leader of that team. I don't know how you could not reward him with it. I mean, he's got to be the NFL MVP at this point.
Dave, your thoughts, because I think you shared that with us last week, and then I'll tell you why after you give me your opinion on Cam Newton for MVP.
Oh, I totally agree with, what he's done for that team. I mean, there are other guys you could look at, but the fact of the matter is that the fact that they're undefeated at this point and they've had such an outstanding season, it takes any attention from anybody else that may be deserving of consideration out of the picture. I mean, it's just basic bottom line. It's like manager of the year in baseball or coach of the year tends to revolve around even though somebody may have done an outstanding coaching career but didn't make it to the playoffs, they're not going to be considered. So yeah, Cam Newton.
Well, the reason I say that because I posted one night, Chad and Dave, on Facebook that I thought that Cam Newton should be the MVP hands down, just based on his performance, because I no longer look at him as an athlete, but a real good quarterback. I mean, this guy's throwing ropes to people. I mean, it's like he's setting up. Yesterday, he set up Ted Ginn for like 2 large touchdowns. I mean, long touchdowns. So I put something on Facebook, and a lady says, "Oh, absolutely not. He's an asshole. He's too confident. He's egotistical." So what would you say about that, Chad? Because, I mean, the guy's really confident, and the whole team's displaying that now.
Well, he's an entertainer on TV.
True.
I mean, I don't know the guy. Yeah. I don't know the guy personally, but he's showing me some fun when he's on the field.
Oh, and the whole team is.
Obviously, he has the locker room because he's the unquestioned leader of the team.
Right.
It's hard for us to make a statement about an individual's personality when all we do is see him throw touchdowns and throw passes on a Sunday afternoon. But we don't know that guy.
Yeah.
We don't know that guy at all.
No,
but as I say, my point about Cam Newton is he's having a very special season on a very special team.
Yeah.
I mean, this is a unanimous decision if I've ever seen one.
Well, they've got some players on that team too, and Dave, you might remember this. Was it back in '85 that Ron Rivera played for Buddy Ryan, or was it Mike Ditka, I guess, when the Bears went to the Super Bowl with Refrigerator Perry and Jim McMahon and those guys, and before they even got to the playoffs, they did that rap video. Do you remember that?
Super Bowl Shuffle.
Yeah, the Super Bowl
Shuffle.
Well, Ron Rivera was, again, a player of the Bears back then. He's now the coach of North Carolina, I should say Carolina Panthers. So, he doesn't seem that it's a problem with his team celebrating the way they do. I mean, hey, let's face it, Gay yesterday had a celebration, and they threw 2 flags at him. And then on the sidelines, who was on the sidelines? One of the coaches was dancing with him. I'm like, okay, so now we're going to end up with 3 flags here. So, I don't know. The point being, again, I go along with what Chad said. It's entertainment, people. You know what I mean? I know it's NFL doesn't stand for no fun league. I think they're still allowed to have a little fun, and Carolina Panthers embrace that, and that's kind of cool and refreshing to see. Instead of like stodgy Tom Brady and some of these other quarterbacks that make a touchdown, they throw their hands up like they're God's gift to quarterbacks, and then they move on. So I like seeing that. That's all I'm saying.
Yeah, well, and a lot of times people will misinterpret ego and things as confidence as ego. And there's just a certain, they like baseball.
Right.
What are they? Grown men playing a kid's game.
Yeah.
I don't know that you can say football is necessarily a kid's game, although kids play it everywhere.
Yeah.
And so you have a bunch of grown men playing a kid's game, I guess you could say.
Well,
so they're going to be happy. They're going to celebrate.
Yeah.
And Cam Newton is confident in what he can do. And so he's just displaying his confidence, and some people misinterpret that as a big ego.
And I love to see.
And you know what?
Go ahead.
The NFL needs more of this.
Oh, don't they? Yes.
Without a question about. Do you guys remember back in the mid '80s with the 3 amigos, the wide receivers from the Denver Broncos?
Oh, I remember those guys. Yeah.
Or the Fun Bunch from Washington, whenever they would score, or God forbid.
T.O. or
Roger
something.
Goodell look on Billy White Shoes Johnson.
Oh, yeah.
Whenever he would score, on a punt return. That's what makes this fun. Now it's like you said, it's too cosmopolitan. It's too
too stodgy.
It's a game.
Yeah.
It's built for you to have fun, and for me, sitting on my couch on a Sunday afternoon,
right,
to have fun watching you have fun.
You know what it reminds me of, Dave? It reminds me of when the shirts moved into the radio industry in the 80s. All the fun went out the door. Because now, seriously, all the business people walked in, had no idea what the industry was about because they never played it or they were never in it, and they came in, and it's like, okay, now all the fun's gone. Seriously. And that's what the NFL is basically doing to these guys when they shut them down from these little celebrations, because I know the viewer, I enjoyed watching William Gay, I guess his name is, yesterday, and some of the other celebrations on the sideline for the Steelers. I loved seeing some of those fights. People got flagged, you know what I'm saying? But I also love watching Cam Newton and the Panthers embrace those celebrations now, And listen to this. Now, I didn't know this, Chad, and you might be able to speak to this. He's given away I think 15, 20 balls this year, and they fined him for every ball that he gave to a kid, which would put him up around $250,000. I always thought they could throw those balls into the stands without any kind of peril.
It's a $9 billion revenue league.
You got to pay for that.
They can't afford $100 football going to a kid.
That's what I'm thinking.
That's the problem with the National Football League. And as much as I am an NFL fan at heart, tried and true since I've been a little boy, the NFL has to get out of this stage where it thinks it's above everything. And hell yeah, we got to protect the integrity of the game by not doing that. That has nothing to do with the integrity of the game. Your tickets cost $75, $85, to sit in there, and that's in the cheap seats.
Yeah,
those people who get in the ball are paying $300.
Oh,
Let them have a souvenir for crying out loud.
Dave, were you aware that those balls had to be? I always thought they would allow you to throw them in the stands, but then again, like you said, hey, it's a business, man. Somebody has to pay for the ball, and so now Cam's been giving them away to children. I mean, he goes over and hands them to them. And so it's just incredible. I'll
tell you what, I don't know if you noticed during the Steeler game, but the touchdown that D'Angelo Williams scored, he wanted to give the ball to a kid that was,
had a Steeler jersey on. Yeah.
And they put the netting up.
Yeah, and he pulled the netting back, didn't he?
The netting back and go over and hand the ball. And it was like, man, that just gets to be, and it's like Major League Baseball.
Yeah.
It's like they give away baseballs. I mean, every time. They change out baseballs so frequently.
Oh, yeah.
It's amazing. But nonetheless, it's no big deal in baseball. Fans have kind of gotten used to that because of the way baseball conducts itself.
Mm-hmm.
And so, why should it's like Chad said, it's $100 football, for God's sake.
Well, you remember in the indoor football league, as petty as that league was, it was always said, the motto was when they had the Johnstown River Hounds, and then what was the team that you followed for us? The Generals, and we had the Jackals. And the saying was, keep the ball, but throw the player back. Remember how the players would fall into the stands, but the balls would the saying was, keep the ball, but throw the player back. So I just don't understand where the NFL is coming from. It's already a multi-billion corporation. And, the other conspiracy is, and we'll touch on this real quick, DraftKings. And what's the other betting site now? I got to believe the NFL has money in those guys. Do you think, Chad, have you heard of some of these betting? They've been advertising this all year long. The betting sites, DraftKings, and whatever that other thing is.
I don't get into that stuff.
I don't either, but I see their ads.
1 week fantasy leagues.
Yeah.
There is a ton of money flowing through that stuff.
Well, do you think
no doubt about it.
ESPN or somebody has money in that because these ads are running all the time, 24 hours a day, you know? And I'm almost thinking the NFL has to have their hand in that. But I'm going to tell you guys something. What's going to kill the NFL is when that movie comes out in a week or two called Concussion. Oh, you're going to see some things. You're going to hear some things. And the truth will be told. This is a movie that the NFL certainly doesn't want coming out. And they certainly don't want it coming out before the playoffs around Christmas time. So we'll see how that whole thing works out. That's a true story. And I can attest that Justin Strzelczyk, who played for the Steelers, and you might remember that name, he was a head case, and even told me one time that he drove a motorcycle in the snow off the top of Seven Mountains there, Seven Springs, and the team actually wrote into his contract that he wasn't allowed to ride a motorcycle as long as he played for the Steelers. And guess what he did? I don't know if you guys know how he got killed. He ended up hitting a tanker truck with his motorcycle, and that was his end. So anyhow, it'll be interesting to see what that movie's all about. Let's move on to this. Chad, who do you got tonight, Giants or the Dolphins? Who are you taking?
And I'm pausing because I really don't care, but I'm going to take man, they're two really bad teams.
Yeah, they are. That's why they're on Monday nights.
The Giants, and I'm just pulling that out because
all right, you had to say something.
Might throw a touchdown pass.
Yeah.
In the last seconds, it'll bounce off somebody's helmet, and they'll catch it and win.
Dave, having said that, you can also give me your choice: the Giants or the Dolphins tonight. And don't they put some dog games on Monday night and Thursday? Go ahead.
It's horrible.
What the hell's up with that?
The dog games factor is there, and the only one that manages to get. Although one could argue it was a half-decent game, I guess, but in the end, last Sunday night should be, a real primo game.
Oh, yeah.
I couldn't believe, to be honest with you, and no insult meant to the Texans, but I thought that the Steelers-Bengals should have been Sunday night game.
Yeah.
And so I don't know where the flex scheduling kicks in, but I thought it should have kicked in this week because to me that was probably the top game in the NFL yesterday to be watching. And the other one that surprised me at first, and then I understood what was going on, was why weren't the Eagles on Fox? Well, because
why weren't they?
CBS had the game, had the Bills-Eagles game. Since it was NFC, AFC.
AFC, okay. So the Bills basically, that game was played in Buffalo then?
No, it was played in
Philadelphia. Okay,
that's why I think that's why CBS had the game.
Okay, Fox usually gets those NFC games. That's why I was really confused, thinking the Eagles game would be on during the Steeler game, so I could switch back and forth. Unfortunately, I couldn't do that.
Yeah, so, you got to watch Carolina just absolutely demolish them.
They dominated in that game. But who do you
I'm sitting there. When are you going to put a competitive game on here? Get this off.
Well, who are you taking tonight, Giants or the Dolphins? Okay,
Giants.
You take the Giants. And, Chad, you had mentioned something about these teams making the playoffs. I remember the year that the Giants won the Super Bowl last. I believe they were 7-9 that year. So it can happen that a team can emerge and have a wonderful playoff system or a season if they can get into the playoffs. That's the main thing, the playoffs. Okay. It's Monday Night Sports Talk here on the airnetwork.net. Greg Banks in the studio, Chad States Huntington, and we have Dave Shannon in Altoona. Chad, Pete Rose, been denied again, perhaps reinstated in Major League Baseball. He met with the commissioner today. Commissioner says no. So his chances of ever getting the Hall of Fame now seem to be done, right?
Yeah, he's done.
He's done.
You know why? Because the commissioner said, Pete, are you still gambling on sports? Pete said, well, of course I am.
And he was told not to? That's a requirement?
He was told not to. Well, it's like an alcoholic saying, hey, you got to stop drinking or you can't come back to work. Did you stop drinking? No. Well, then you can't come back to work. So, Pete Rose just made an easy call for the commissioner by saying, no, I'm still betting. He didn't show any reform.
Right.
And that ended up being his downfall. So if he's not able to get in now, he's done.
He's never.
Write him off.
Yeah. Dave, did we lose you? You're still there. I think we lost Dave. He'll come back in a minute. But let me ask you this. I know a lot of people want to put that with the White Sox scandal of, what was it, '06 or something, way back when. But I think Pete Rose is a lovable character, and we don't really know, did he bet as a player? We have to look at his performance on the field, Chad, don't we? History's going to tell his story regardless.
Well, yeah, it is. History's going to tell Barry Bonds' story. History's going to tell Roger Clemens' story.
Yeah, that's true, too.
None of them getting in the Hall of Fame either. You know what I mean? So you're going to have those individuals that are you're still going to talk about.
Yeah.
They're just not going to be part of, the hall up in Cooperstown. And I think it's a right decision. Again, they're protecting the integrity of what that enshrinement actually means.
Right.
And not necessarily the game, but what enshrinement means. That's hallowed ground. That's where the best of the best go. And I'm not saying as a player that Pete Rose doesn't belong there. Obviously, I think he does. But because what he did was when he was a part of the game, as a manager. Now, he said he never bet against his team. Mm-hmm. He always bet for them to win. But regardless, what are you doing betting when you're managing a team? You know better.
And he denied that for many years.
The issue is not in the decision. The issue for Pete Rose is he's paying for his actions, which he should. Right.
Monday Night Sports Talk. It's Greg Banks in the studio. Chad States we have in Huntington. Hey, Dave, are you still with us?
Yes, sir.
Okay, Dave Shannon from Altoona. Dave, you want to weigh in on this Pete Rose thing because, again, the reinstatement thing, I know he's announcing for Fox, and one of the things I heard today, which is kind of surprising, that a lot of the sports writers who would be on a certain committee, because he has never been inducted, his name's never come up for a vote, those people will likely never vote for him. They're old, stodgy writers, and they pissed him off, or he pissed them off, because what he does is, every year, he goes to the Hall of Fame, Cooperstown, and he's down the street signing autographs and making money. So how do you feel about that? Will he ever get to Cooperstown? I doubt it, huh?
I don't know. Posthumously, at some point, the argument about what he did on the field may end up, grabbing hold with some younger people and saying, why isn't this guy here? Mm-hmm. And they'll talk about the gambling. And at some point, somebody may say, well, what he did on the field is why we're going to put him in. Or they may just, I don't know. There seems to be, at times, as generations go by, a lack of wanting to hold on to traditions.
Yeah.
And, and it's kind of that type of thing, although it's a little bit different. There's a steadfast rule on that, as there should be, about betting. But they may be willing, as generations go by, to overlook the gambling issue and end up saying, hey, it's what the guy did on the field and he should be in. So.
Exactly. Charlie Hustle, at this point, denied another trip to Major League Baseball reinstatement. Anything happening on Hot Stove-wise, Chad, that you've been keeping up with other than perhaps maybe some trades going on this year?
Wow. Has it been busy?
Okay, what's happening?
I was waiting to get to baseball. I was hoping to get to baseball. Johnny Cueto is a San Francisco Giant.
Saw that for $130 million or something.
So now you're gonna put Jeff Smarja, Johnny Cueto, Matt Cain, Jake Peavy, all in the same rotation.
Yeah.
The Giants just loaded up.
It's 2016. It's an even year. It's time for the Giants to win the series.
Giants just loaded up.
That's true.
Hey, Zach Greinke, come over my way. We're going to play some ball over here in Arizona. Yeah. Arizona did a lot in free agency.
Well, I saw that earlier this afternoon, Dave, that trade going down. And if my memory serves me right, Cueto last was in Kansas City, right? He just appeared from the Reds. Okay, he was in that series. And now he's with the Giants, and I think he signed 6 years for $130 million. And, that's still maybe not big bucks, but it's big enough. And as Chad said, Smarge over there. Let me ask you, what about, as we look down the road, and this is really way down the road, who has the best pitching staff right now in your estimation between some of these teams? What about the Nationals next year, Chad? They got anything coming back?
I mean, they still do. They still have Max Scherzer. They still have
Gio Gonzalez, Steven
Strasburg. Yeah, they're pretty good. But these other teams, they're starting to match up.
Yeah.
I mean, the Giants with Bumgarner and Smarja and Cueto now.
Yeah.
I mean, over the last 6 seasons, Johnny Cueto's had the second best ERA in all of baseball, only behind Mr. Dodger, Clayton Kershaw. The Dodgers still have a fantastic rotation. The Arizona Diamondbacks have one. And let's not forget the NL champion, New York Mets.
I was going to ask you about the Mets.
They're loaded for bear, for crying out loud. And now they have your second baseman, Neil Walker, playing over in New York, which I think the road for Pittsburgh to get back to the postseason just got a lot tougher after today. And I really think it got tougher after that loss.
Yeah.
Neil Walker means a lot to that team, and don't underestimate that as a Pirates fan.
Yeah, but last week, Dave, you said that trade was equitable. You felt the trade we made with the Mets and got the pitcher we got in will more than suffice for losing, our man from
I
Pittsburgh.
think what they did, and Chad, you can, argue with my theory or not, but it's been a foregone conclusion, and I don't know what it is about Neil Walker and the Pirates' ownership
defense.
But there has been a problem that's been ongoing. You saw this coming. You knew it was going to happen. They wanted to get rid of Neil Walker now for an extended period of time.
Right.
They did get a good pitcher in John Neese.
Yeah.
So, and they need pitchers. I mean, Burnett's gone for starters. How long does Liriano hold up? So, at least you got Cole and Neese at this point. And Charlie Morton's gone, I think. Didn't they get rid of Charlie Morton?
Charlie Morton just left. He's in Atlanta now.
Okay, there you go.
So, but bottom line is, I think they were making, in their minds, or at least in my mind, thinking about how they are thinking. Mm-hmm. I think they want Gong at third, Mercer at short, and they think that Josh Harrison can be the everyday second baseman.
Right.
I think they were finding a place for Josh Harrison in the end. And they were disappointed, I think, too. The last couple of seasons, although not so much this past, but the 2 seasons before, Neil was out for extended periods of time. Mm-hmm. With a particular, he had back issues, I think, most of the time. And so with that in mind, I think they were starting to think that as Neil Walker was getting older, the tag injury prone was being applied to him. And I think that's what they were looking at here in the end. Josh Harrison is not going to be the second baseman Neil Walker was.
Right.
I thought defensively, that was a real thrill to watch him play.
But here's again, I'm reading a little bit about Walker's case history. His age may be a factor. Then the fact he couldn't get to the holes quick enough. Now, I'm not so sure Harrison's any quicker than Walker was getting to these locations second base. And you know what we said, Chad, and I said this briefly last week. If they can get the pitching staff together now for the Pirates, and they could acquire, let's say, Matt Adams from St. Louis for first base, they'd have a pretty solid team. What do you think?
Well, yeah. I mean, I don't think St. Louis is going to give him up.
No.
I'm always a little bit more skeptical when getting rid of an everyday player for a pitcher.
Yeah.
Just because there's so much that can happen to a pitcher. The Pirates need to count on Jameson Taillon.
Yeah.
Making the opening day roster to really help that rotation now that Charlie's gone.
Yeah.
But there was something that Neil Walker did for that team
Oh, hometown kid.
When he was there, that made a difference. And you look at the stretches when Neil Walker was injured and wasn't playing for the Pirates, I'd be willing to bet that they were playing 500 ball or lower during those stretches. As soon as he came back, and he wasn't a great statistical contributor, but there was something that he brought to the table every time that he played that made a difference on that team. And I just sense that there's going to be something missing for the Pirates this year, and it has to do with that. Listen, did the Pirates make the right decision? Yeah, they did. Economically, they were, battling back and forth with Walker. Walker, I think, wanted more money than what he truly was worth as a second baseman. So the Pirates made the right decision in that. And granted, Dave, you're right. Jonathan Neese, getting him back or getting him in return, very equitable. But there's something about Neil Walker and what he brought. That maybe it was just because he was a local kid and the fans fed off that, and that fed into the team. But I just think there's going to be something missing.
He certainly was a crowd pleaser. Neil Walker will miss him. Meanwhile, it's Monday Night Sports Talk here on the airnetwork.net. You can always check us out online at the airnetwork.net, or perhaps you like to download that free TuneIn app. Go to TuneIn Radio and look for the Air Network. And, of course, you can listen to us on any mobile device. Hey, meanwhile, if you want to Skype in and talk with Chad States or Dave Shannon or myself, all you have to do is just go in and make a request in Skype to Greg Banks 3. That's Greg Banks 3. We're still working on getting a phone number that you'll be able to call. And, by the way, these broadcasts are rebroadcast on demand on our website every Tuesday throughout the week, and we re-air it during our most of our regular broadcast days, Monday through Friday. Again, this broadcast comes back up Monday evening at 10 o'clock. So we invite you to call us up on Skype, Greg Banks 3. Hey, did you guys watch the Army-Navy game, either one of you? What a great tradition. What a great tradition. I must admit, I got a chance to tune in, and we even had a kid from Johnstown, Jervon Simon. And Dave, you may remember doing a couple of his games during Game of the Week. He was a quarterback for Johnstown High.
Right.
He entered the military academy number 10, and he's a backup quarterback, and he got a little bit of playing time on Saturday. But more importantly, the quarterback, and I don't recall his name, broke Roger Staubach's passing record, all-time passing record. And what a dynamic kid he was. But sort of like Roger Staubach, and anybody who signs up with the military academies, you must make that 4-year commitment first, like David Robinson did before he went into the NBA. And I just admire anybody in the service academies, man. What a great television, at least a great game on television on Saturday. I bet you it would have been even more impressive being at Franklin Field live on Saturday afternoon. So I just wanted to give a tip of the hat to the Army-Navy game. Boy, go Army, go Navy. Now, having said that, there's a new chief in town. There's a sort of a new boss in town. He's militaristic, kind of like. He blows whistles, he makes some noise, and they're going on the ice. If they're not already on the ice now, Dave. Happy days are here again for those Pittsburgh Penguins.
Yes, indeed.
Arriving is their new coach, Mike Sullivan. And here's the thing. I posted on Saturday afternoon, and I called Dave up personally, Chad, but I posted first that Dave Shannon ragged on Mike Johnston all season long. And we kept saying, oh, he's probably going to get fired by Christmas time. I don't know where that came from, but I went along with the program. And Dave got him fired on Saturday. So they have a new coach now for the Penguins, and he's kicking tail already, Dave. He's from Wilkes-Barre, Scranton, by the way.
Yeah, well, he was coaching there, yeah. And has played in the NHL, has NHL coaching experience.
Yeah, he was with Boston for 3 or 4 years as coach.
Yeah, 2003 to 2006. And I've been watching the game. The Penguins are currently behind 2-1. It's in the first period. They're a much more enthusiastic team. They're really going at Braden Holtby rather rapidly and consistently, buzzing like bees around the hive. The one goal that was scored, Nick Backstrom, coming down on the glove side of Fleury, just flat out beat him. It was, I don't know. It was a good shot and all, but, sometimes you expect your goalie to, be able to make that stop. The second goal that they scored was a rebound shot. Always been a problem with Marc-Andre Fleury, I thought, is controlling rebounds after he makes a save.
Yeah.
That was what happened to him there. Penguins goal was a nice goal that was scored on a shot by Ben Lovejoy from out around the blue line. Malkin was crashing in toward the net and deflected it right in past Holtby. So it's 2-1, and the first period has just ended. So Sullivan's debut so far, and I mean, they showed what he did during one of the timeouts, one of the TV timeouts. They came back and showed you the video of him reaming the team out.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
Right, there's a new boss in town.
Yeah.
He is fiery. And one other note so far from tonight's game, just throw this in quick, and that is they did a tribute to Pascal Dupuis.
Oh, great!
They did it. They foregoed the commercial break on TV.
Yeah,
they stayed with it the whole way through. Now those breaks are around 2-3 minutes long, and the entire time
was
standing ovation.
Yeah,
Dupuis was there with his family, his wife, and his 4 kids. And he was standing there, and you could see the eyes were getting real wet.
Oh, I'm sure there was a lot of misty-eyed people in the stands at Console. I don't know if you're aware, Chad, but Pascal Dupuis hung him up last Wednesday. I believe it was Tuesday or Wednesday. And, of course, a lot of fans are going to miss him. But as Dave said, you know what, Dave, they'll probably keep him on in some capacity, maybe scouting or perhaps even as an instructor or maybe assistant coach. But Mike Sullivan, I'm already impressed with him. Here's one of the quotes that he made coming out of the shoot on Saturday afternoon. He says, we've got to do something about the breakout. The breakout has to change. Sullivan says, quote, we're going to work on that a lot. That's going to be more of an emphasis. From my experience of being around teams, I think teams that come out of their end zone in an efficient manner have the best chance to create the type of offense they've been looking for here in Pittsburgh. End quote. I think he's getting across his message from the get-go.
And he did that in practice, Greg.
Yeah,
I mean, that was what they said the last segment of the morning skate yesterday and a segment of it again today.
Yeah, man. So
the end was all about getting out of your own end.
Yeah, so right now they're taking on the Capitals, and the Penguins are trailing 2-1, I believe it is.
Right.
What period we in? Second, Dave, I guess?
Just ended the first.
Okay, ending the first. Chad, do you want to add anything to this new hire for the Pittsburgh Penguins? Because, Dave just stayed on this guy. Johnston, we don't even know if the guy's he's probably working at Walmart tonight, and then Dave shows up at Walmart, and the guy's not pushing the carts back to the store fast enough. He's going to catch hell there, too.
I have never been prouder of Dave Shannon in my whole entire life. Only in the fact that, he got a coach fired.
He got it right.
All the papers will be saying that, just so you know.
Well, they put it on Facebook. I know that. They're blaming him for that already.
And so, Dave, you ought to be proud, pound yourself on the back. Plus,
you caught
after months and months and months.
Oh, man.
Dave being down and out because of the Pittsburgh Penguins, and I get to listen to a segment where he is happier than a clam.
There's a spark there.
Great.
You notice that little spark in his voice tonight. Yeah. You have a little you got a little swag in your step now, Dave.
Oh, he does. He sounds good.
But you got to listen, just like Sid the Kid said, hey, we've got a lot of improvements to do. It's going to take some time, Dave. Give the guy at least maybe 6 months to a year before you start running him out of town, please.
I have no problems right now, even if they lose tonight, because, that's a quick transition.
Oh, yeah.
They just played the Kings on
He had his first practice last night, right? Or yesterday, I believe it was.
Yeah. And so, I'm not too concerned. I'd love to see him win because I hate the Capitals, but nonetheless, that may not happen tonight, and that's okay because this is, he is going to change the way everything goes on. I think, Greg, you pointed out before we went on the air about the fact that after the practice today, he had the guys doing push-ups afterwards.
Yes, he did. He had them sweating. And they weren't sweating to the oldies either, Chad. You know what I'm saying? So, hey, Chad, speaking of which, a guy that is doing an excellent job over at Penn State University, of course, Coach Sanders, they wrestled actually against Wisconsin in that Big Ten opener yesterday. 13,000 people packed Bryce Jordan. Now, I know they could have gotten more, and Coach seemed to be a little bit upset, because they didn't fill the place. But what's your take on that big win against Wisconsin, 36-7 in that dual opener yesterday?
Well, they're number one for a reason.
Yeah.
And Penn State has absolute hammers up and down that lineup.
Woo, okay.
The 125-pounder Nico Megaludis ranked 4 in the country.
Yeah.
Their 133-pounders ranked 8th. They have 2 freshmen that are ranked 3rd in the country, and both of those kids are lights out. So, I mean, Sanderson doesn't recruit a wrestler.
Yeah.
He can go pull them out of the halls. He's recruiting national champs.
That's true.
So unless your aspirations are you want to be standing on the podium at the end of the year holding the big poster that says, hey, I just won this entire bracket, don't even bother, because that's what he's trying to get there. And proof's in the pudding. And, he does it. 4 national championships in 5 years.
He took a year off last year, right?
He took a year off last year, which is not uncommon with 9.9 scholarships.
Yeah.
The days of running off 13 or 14 in a row, like Iowa once did, they're done. You're not able to sustain that. So 4 out of 5, and now he's positioned himself to win another 3 or 4 with the caliber of athletes that he has sitting there. Tremendous, but it's not a surprise whenever you bring Cale Sanderson in as your head coach that the good, solid wrestlers are going to be attracted to come into your program, and that's exactly what he's getting.
And I notice he is really recruiting Pennsylvania. I mean, these kids are from Abbottstown. They're from, Murraysville, not necessarily known for high schools that produce wrestlers, but I'm not so sure. You talked about it a little bit during the wrestling match against Tyrone last week, where these kids are wrestling, a lot of them early on, and of course more frequently throughout the year, wrestling with young guns. Does he really work with the Strip Matter Brothers and all these other camps that are going on around the country?
Well, I don't know if he's allowed to, per NCAA rules. I think he has to stay out of that. But with that said, you look at guys from Abbottstown. You look at guys from Tyrone just had an All-American. Belfont just had an All-American. Huntington has actually had an All-American. So, when you start to boil this down, it's because Pennsylvania wrestling is the best in the nation.
Oh, no
Period,
doubt.
end of story, and it's not even close. So these guys that are coming from these small towns that you don't think anything of in the sport of wrestling, this is it.
This is a hotbed, baby.
Ball game.
Yeah.
This is the ball game.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Hey, Dave, they're now 5-0, Penn State Nittany Lion wrestlers. They'll take on Ryder coming up Saturday. And having said that, I don't know what Ryder brings. They'll be at Ryder. But as I mentioned, Chad, the coach seemed to be a little upset that they only got 12,862 people at Bryce Jordan. And I believe there's another match coming up there. Oh, that is already standing room only as we know it. I don't know who that's going to be with. I believe Nebraska.
That's Ohio State. That's Ohio State the first week of February.
Is that what that is?
In fact, it has been. Yeah.
Okay, I thought it was Nebraska. Okay, so they'll have Nebraska at Rec Hall. I mean, 12,000. Right. Come on, they can't be getting that many people for basketball games, can they, Dave? I mean, seriously.
Oh, no. No, I mean, you go to the basketball games and they have the upper decks, they have the big curtains up.
Shut down, yeah.
So, they know they can't get that. So, it's Cale should not feel too bad about the kind of crowd.
13,000 people. Come on, Coach.
Yeah.
I mean, the other hot ticket over at Penn State, guys, and this will ring, Dave's ears, is the hockey team.
Oh, yeah. I saw the ranked for the first time, right?
Country and playing great right now.
Wow.
Yeah, they are. They are.
Are they getting anybody out of there? Well, we saw one kid actually go to Buffalo, didn't we, Dave? Bakula saw one of the Penn State Nittany Lion Icemen. Didn't he take him or draft him for Buffalo this year? Or one of those teams I know got like a kid from Penn State, from the Icemen. Yeah.
I can't say for sure, but the bottom line is, as this continues, there will be more Penn State players, as long as they have the national prominence. The one thing that's and don't sell out the teams that aren't necessarily in national prominence.
Right.
It's not being able to produce NHL players, but you do get more attention.
Oh, Boston College or somebody, yeah.
Yeah, when you're ranked, it makes a big difference, and you're going to see Penn State players get opportunities. Will they be able to do it? It's up to the individual.
Wow.
Yeah.
Hey,
and what a facility. If listen, anybody who's listening out there, go. The Pagula Ice Center is one of the top-notch facilities you're going to see in the country. It is fabulous.
It is the place to be, of course, at Penn State now, in addition to Bryce Jordan Center, Rec Hall, even with the Matmen. Hey, speaking of which, what is probably their most challenging match of the season? These guys doing the Southern Shuffle, or what is that
they'll do the Southern Scuffle, which is a big
that's during the holidays.
That's a holiday tournament that they'll wrestle.
Okay.
They'll have probably 6 or 7, maybe 8 ranked teams that'll be involved with that.
Right.
So it's a great tournament right on New Year's Day for them to wrestle in. I think Oklahoma State is going to be there.
Ooh, okay.
That's probably their chief power.
Yeah.
That can test them for a national championship. But I really don't think that on their schedule, dual meet wise, there's really anybody that's going to challenge them out there this year.
Oh, really? And they'll pick up a lot of placeholders, nationals this year, so that ought to be interesting. Hey, we got about 4 minutes before we wrap up Monday Night Sports Talk. Greg Banks in the studio, Dave Shannon, Altoona, Chad States in Huntington tonight. Chad, real quick, I want you to kind of if you can sum up the Keystone Wrestling thing that the Huntington kids were in this weekend. Did we get any champs out of that? What was that?
We did not. That was the King of the Mountain tournament.
King of the Mountain,
over
okay.
And probably the second most prestigious tournament besides states that you have out there.
Right.
Numerous top-ranked AAA teams and numerous top-ranked AA teams. Huntington had a kid, Jacob Oliver, at 170 pounds.
Right.
He finished second to a AAA kid from Bethlehem Catholic that will probably end up winning states. But all in all, Huntington had 6 place winners, finished in 6th place out of a 23-team field. Everybody that finished ahead of them was at the AAA level.
Oh, okay, so they're the only AA. Ooh.
They were the top AA school, and that includes beating out a team from Denner Lancaster area, Boiling Springs, who was a returning AA state champion last year. So it was a tremendous weekend for John Mikett and his crew to be able to lay the ground of what this season is going to be for them.
Fantastic. We had the Tyrone match on last week, David. As I mentioned on the phone the other night, Tyrone forfeited, what was it, 5 or 6 matches, wasn't it, Chad, because of ineligibility and maybe kids not making weight?
8 matches, actually. They only wrestled 6 of them, but sad state of affairs in Tyrone.
Yeah, it was. I think final on that one was, what, 71 to, I forget what it was, 71 to 9, I think it was.
That's what it was.
But having said that, Dave, let's wrap it up between you and Chad. Here it is, Bishop Guilfoyle going back to the state finals in football this weekend against Farrell High School, who I used to think they used to be in the WPIAL, but they stepped out a few years ago, and they play in District 10. What a matchup that should be, Dave. And then, Chad, you can talk a little bit about BG.
I definitely, BG's a juggernaut. And by the way, before we get totally focused on BG, a tip of the cap to Central for getting as far as they did. And they played a competitive game on Friday night and just ended up losing. They were actually leading in the fourth quarter, 21-14. So tip of the cap to them. And
also Berlin Brothers Valley, because Berlin actually lost to Farrell. Final score in that, I believe, was 26-21. So if Berlin would have played and won that game, they would have been matched up with BG. How's that? I mean, that had even been more interesting. But anyhow, Coach Wheeler has a great team back. And man, they got some big boys on the front line. I saw like 3 guys on the offensive line. They had to have gone 6'4", at least 260, 270. These have to be D1 kids, Chad. I mean, have you seen some of the sizes of these BG kids? Woo!
D1 kids at a single A school.
Unheard of. They're big.
I just want to say,
come on now, it's only Altoona.
Good luck to BG. You're local, but PIAA, get your own parochial leagues.
Yeah. What do you think, Dave, on that issue of parochial leagues? And, because these kids, I mean, seriously, they were some huge boys. I think I'd have checked their cards, man, just make sure they were high schoolers.
Chad's right. There needs to be something done about this because you cannot allow the public school system to compete against a school system that basically recruits athletes.
Right. Okay.
I mean, now the accusations have been around for years that high school teams, and there are any number of circumstances you can think of where recruiting has actually been done in the public school system as well.
Oh, yeah.
It's an accepted practice with the parochial leagues.
Well, let's face it. What's a school in State College now? Is that St. Joe's over there?
St. Joe's Prep.
Yeah, sooner or later, they're going to be able to get some kids from, I'm sure they got some kids from Bellefonte. They may be able to get some kids out of Huntingdon at some given time because, unless those kids from Huntingdon have to go up to Bishop Guilfoyle. I mean, so we know that, recruiting, as it were, it's not really done. But then again, like I said about the Hawkins brothers, they were faithful Baptist boys, and all of a sudden they became Catholics overnight. And they both made it to the NFL. How about that, huh? Wow. All right, hey, Chad States, thank you, man. And Dave Shannon, thanks for joining us on Monday Night Sports Talk. Let's have a great one. By the way, that Farrell VG game coming up on PCN at 1 p.m. this Friday. It's the Class A Football State Championship, and we'll talk about that coming up next Monday right here.